Pants list only has a few rank 1 options, so I tried them all before picking one to 1cc. First, Magic Girl. Magic Girl is an unlicensed Sega Genesis game that was self-published by a Taiwanese company called Gamtech. It's pretty rudimentary all around, but the biggest problem with it is that everything is choppy. I don't know if you'll be able to tell due to the frame rate of the video, but when you're playing it, it feels like your ship and enemies are clicking around the screen like in a tile-based game like Dragon Quest. That alone is pretty damning in a genre that's all about tight dodges, but even if everything did move smoothly, there's no level design. Enemies are just chucked in at random, and there's no difficulty progression or really anything to break things up, just clumps of the same 4 or 5 enemies over and over and over. Looking into Gamtech a little, I can see that I shouldn't have expected anything more. They were notorious for making shameless bootlegs and fake sequels to hit games. There's the totally legit Lion King 2, Super Donkey Kong 99, and even this straight up pirated Genesis port of Super Mario World that they had the audacity to call Super Mario World 64. A certain part of me has some real nostalgia for the era when scams and knockoffs like this were still common. Back when I was a kid living in the Philippines, you could go to the mall and find stalls selling Halo 3 for the Wii or Mario Kart, but the art on the paper sleeve they would sell it in had like Sonic and Garfield and Shrek on it. Somehow that level of hustle is a lot less annoying to me than all these fake mobile ads and games with stolen screenshots that you see today. Anyway, back alley jank charm or not, Magic Girl is a terrible game made by a company that made money breaking the law and lying to children, so this game is coming off of the pants list for sure. The next one that I tried was Imperishable Night on easy mode. This is the first Toho game on the list. Toho is a big topic and I'd like to spend a whole video talking about it, and if this is the floor for Toho challenges, then I want to do it so I can gauge the other games better. For this tier, I decided I'm actually going to do 2 1cc's. We'll talk about our last game Coryoon today, and I'll upload a bonus episode in the next week or so all about Imperishable Night and the all-consuming black hole that is Toho. Okay, so finally, Coryoon. Coryoon is a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up released in 1991 by Naxat Soft for the PC Engine, which is called the TurboGrafx 16 in North America. Naxat Soft later became Kaga Create in 1998, and then eventually shut down for good in 2015. We'll find that that's sadly the story for the developers of most of the games on the pants list. Naxat Soft was fairly prolific in the first few years of the PC Engine's lifespan. They made a handful of sports games as well as Devil's Crush, which is the official sequel to Alien Crush, a pinball game that was developed by legendary Shmup developer Compile. Naxat's first Shmup is called W-Ring, the Double Rings, which was about as inventive as its title. W-Ring is an overt Gradius clone with none of the artistic charm of the developer's later shmups. And it really is the art that sets Coryoon apart from its contemporaries in the genre. Graphic designer Kenji Morikan Mori is to thank for that. Morikan took advantage of the expanded color options made possible by the 16-bit era video games to produce vibrant art, clearly inspired by cartoons and anime. Morikan later designed the graphics for a Super Nintendo game called The Twisted Tales of Spike McFang, which, in addition to having the best title I've ever heard, is also one of the best looking games on the console. In my last video, I referred to Coryoon as a cute-em-up, which is what it sounds like, a cute shoot-em-up. This subgenre name is sometimes used to refer to shmups that have a more cartoony art style or that have you control anything that isn't a robot or a spaceship. In Coryoon, you control a baby dragon who breathes fire to kill enemies. Your mission is to rescue the princess who was afflicted by a curse that turned her into a chibi character. So you can hold down the fire button to constantly shoot small fireballs, or you can stop shooting to automatically charge up a big blast of fire. At frequent intervals, a stork flies by and drops an orb which grants a shot upgrade on pickup and also gives the player temporary invulnerability. The player starts with 4 lives and gets an extra life every 100,000 points, up to a maximum of 9. Each stage has a mid-level boss and a final boss, and after all 6 stages, you must complete a boss rush of every final boss in the game to reach the end. There are no loops, so this is a true full 1-credit run. The frequent extra lives and temporary invulnerability granted by picking up power-ups are what make this game so accessible. Some of the later bosses would be very challenging to avoid taking a hit on, but because you get so many lives and are getting about 10 seconds of invulnerability a minute, you can make all kinds of mistakes without it leading to a game over. I got nervous when I got to the rush at the end and realized I'd have to refight all of the bosses in the game, but you get so many points from killing each boss that you can safely die 2 or 3 times on any of them and still come out even. I'd say the toughest boss for me was this sea urchin thing, just because you have to wait so long for it to move into a position where you can safely shoot it, or you have to take advantage of your temporary invincibility to rush in and get some point-blank shots and then retreat before you take damage. The crystal turtle boss also took some practice because it really dominates the screen in its second phase, so you have to plan your movements to avoid getting caught in the upper third without an exit. The final boss has an attack where it spits out these little homing enemies that are very fast. This got me a few times in my final run, but again, because there are so many power-up drops and extra lives, I finished the game with 9 lives despite dying 8 times in the final boss fight alone. I think Coryoon is actually a hard game that is just extremely forgiving. It would be a very difficult game to try to clear without dying, but it lets you die a lot. I didn't count my attempts, but I would say it probably took me between 5 and 10 tries to get the 1cc. Overall, Coryoon is a beautiful cartoony shmup with great boss fights that is totally approachable for people who aren't familiar with the genre already. Experienced players will probably find the extends and power-ups to be too forgiving, but if you really want a challenge, you could try for a no-hit run. Not that I have much to compare it to, but I think this is a solid baseline for the Pants list. Anyone could realistically 1cc this game, but not without a bit of learning and practice. So that's our first normal 1cc of the challenge. Something tells me I got really spoiled on this one and will be in for a rude awakening with the difficulty spike not far up the list. That difficulty spike may even arise next time when we do a bonus episode on Toho Imperishable Night before we move on to rank 2. See you then!